Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I'm Sean Butler. I'm a sick Sean today. I feel terrible again. Can't shake it. My immune system is like peak low, and there is nobody in the world, maybe with the exception of one person, who is feeling more sorry for himself than I am this morning, and that possibly could be Big Ange Postecoglou, because I don't know, man. We're going to have to talk about this one. I'm trying to give that guy a lot of rope. I'm trying to give him enough wiggle room to understand that there are always explanations and excuses that have a part to play in what happens in life, right? And there's always a desire to hold other people accountable, if possible, for things that you know yourself you are a participant in the output of. But at the moment, I feel like Ange is talking a little bit out of both sides of his mouth with regards for the Romero thing, followed by the Timo thing. I feel like there is probably some discontent, some disharmony in the dressing room. And I'm guessing, for what it's worth, that I don't think that he is saying this stuff to us and not also saying it behind the scenes. But you have to probably imagine that in his mind, he is on the receiving end of some pretty strong criticism from, obviously, the fans, from the media. And there's challenges that he hasn't experienced for a long time that come with being, a struggling side. And regardless of the situation, regardless of injuries, how reasonable they are as some sort of explanation for part of the issues, I think that there is a lot of question marks around what is going on with decision making, and also obviously interpretation of the system and the buy-in from the players. There's lots of things that are not just down to injuries that are responsible for what's going on. We're going to talk about it right now, guys, and we are going to also ask you for some favours before we do. Hit the like button for me if you enjoy this content. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topic. I'm going to try and keep this one under the usual length because I want to go back to bed, if I'm honest. But listen, yesterday, tough game. It was always going to be a tough game. Even way back when we were playing better football and the injuries weren't there, when people were looking at that fixture and saying it's going to be a 4-0 Tottenham win, I was saying, on what planet? Rangers are a difficult team. They're a big football team with a ridiculously loyal supporter base. The English-Scotland, the English-Scottish rivalry was always going to be, playing a part here. The atmosphere was going to be powerful and dangerous. And all those things came true. The football itself was pretty poor on both parts. I don't think either team was particularly great. If either team deserved to win, it was definitely Rangers. And if it wasn't for Fraser Forster, then we would have been on the receiving end of 0 points gained out of that fixture. And if you think back, if we're entirely honest with ourselves, 1 win in 8, how many of them points that we actually got, how many of the results that didn't end up disastrous were in no small part down to performances by Fraser Forster? Quite an incredible outperformance relative to expectations from that guy. And maybe there's a small takeaway positive there that, I said in yesterday's video, we have to start looking towards the January transfer window with regards, decision making, how many of these injuries need to be papered over, the cracks with, depending on what we're doing in the cups. Do you kind of disregard whatever plans you may have had at the end of the summer with what you would do in the next window that weren't necessarily the priorities immediately, but was something we could kick the can with? Do you still go after that process, or do you have to dismiss all of that and then focus on some of the more heavier areas of the team that are riddled with injuries? And on that note, for what it's worth, Ange said in today's press conference, which we're going to talk about, I'm going to sort of go on this random weave today. I'm not sure it's going to be a structured monologue, so bear with me. But he did actually say that, with regards Micky and Romero's injuries, both of them, we don't really know where we're at. He said something which is obvious. He said, when you get injured, you have to kind of give it a couple of days to settle down before you kind of know where you're at. And that's where we're at, which, I don't think that he's going to win any kind of science awards or medicine awards for stating the obvious. But that to me sounds like what he's really saying is that there's probable more bad news to come with regards timelines for their returns. And obviously with Ben Davies on this hamstring injury, that's going to be a lengthy one. And so, we might have to get used to the idea of Radu Dragusin playing alongside somebody. Now, Archie Gray, listen, I'm all for that. You know how much hope I've got for this guy. I think he's a wonderful player, and I think he'll be a tip-top professional. And he really is. He's buying into the system. He's been asked to play left back, right back, centre back more than he has anything else. And he's not any of those positions. At 5'9" or 5'10", I think he is. He's not tall, is he? unless I'm mistaken, I think he's about 5'10" at tops, then, are we asking too much to put a 5'10" non-centre-back at centre-back alongside Radu? I think it's maybe a bridge too far, if I'm entirely honest, against some of the teams that have got bigger forwards and that know how to take advantage of the height differential, even against regular centre-backs that are just a little bit sort of smaller by nature or stature. I think there's problems all over the park in that particular conversation for me. I'm not entirely sure where you would go out, otherwise. But listen, we had Ash Phillips. He's part of the conversation right now around getting a recall from loan. What about Dorrington? This guy was supposed to be one of the top contenders to break out of the youth team into the first team last season and the season before, and none of those things have happened. And if you're picking a guy who's not a centre-back at all, who's just as young or old as that guy, and let's be honest, he didn't have a great first half. He was a little bit fish out of water. Then you've got to kind of question, well, what's going on there? Like, are we being misled around the quality of our youth team? I've always said it's very difficult to judge how good the guys are when they're outperforming at youth, because the leap to the first team is such a massive one that it's impossible to really tell. And that's why I never understood why we kind of got rid of the reserve team format, where there was a closer relationship between the two levels. In any event, there's problems in that regard. And look, I'm not going to bash Ange with all of the weight of the hammer for yesterday, because there was no effort put in. He was right in what he said about Timo. The problem is if he's going to say it about him, he should also have said it about Brennan Johnson, about Sonny, about Maddison, about Bissouma, and basically all of the senior players on that pitch. He could throw exactly the same mud towards. And where he's further not right, where he's further in the kind of realms of hypocrisy, obviously, is saying what he said to Christian Romero only 24 hours earlier, when he said, you can't say that stuff. You can't say that in the public forum, the public domain. It's not right. He knows that, and he's apologised. Well, when asked this morning in the pre-match press conference how he reflected on the public criticism of Timo, his response was one of indignance. And that, to me, is a sort of tail of the tape here a little bit. The Australians have got a word for people that sulk when they're criticised and sulk about things unnecessarily, rather than just kind of wearing it and getting on with it. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong with Australians, but it's called a sook, right? He's a bit of a sook. And I think that Ange is demonstrating tendencies of a sook. Bearing in mind, the last time he was under heavy criticism as a manager was, I think, when he was the Australian youth team coach. And he was essentially hounded out by the media for failure in certain tournaments when they had far higher expectations than what was delivered. And he didn't like it then. He didn't take the criticism well then. I remember watching the interviews on TV where he would fire back and fight back. And it obviously shows a level of confidence, but also I think you can interpret that confidence and belief as something that I think is, as I said at the start of this, I believe, it's a ten a penny trait that most people have. It's human nature to not want to receive criticism if in your own internal reflections you have come to the decision or the summary that there's other people that are responsible, that are contributory factors to why whatever you are accused of doing poorly at is not always your fault. And that's human nature. No one wants to have the finger pointed. You are naturally going to think of yourself in better light than others do in times of scrutiny, because no one likes being criticised. And you're also going to obviously point the fingers if you can. And we've seen it 1,000 times, we've seen it many times of late. This is why I always say, when you see things like Hugo Lloris pointing the finger at the ownership for a lack of, or the team for a lack of despondency at not winning the Champions League. And I remember having a chat with the boys that We Are Tottenham TV about this, saying, they described this as proof that Daniel Levy doesn't care about winning. And I said, it's not proof, it's an opinion first and foremost. And also let's scrutinise the person and the motivations of the opinion piece. Who is saying it, and why could they possibly be saying it for any other reason than just truth? Well, in the case of Hugo Lloris, you're the captain of the team. If anyone's more responsible for harvesting a dressing room atmosphere that is a culture of winning than the captain of the football club, it's you. And yet he would rather point the finger at the guy who doesn't spend any time in the dressing room, who is responsible for many things at the football club, but surely not one that is about upping the ante and getting the boys ready for a fight. And to hold the fact that a gesture of buying a watch against him is somehow a demonstration of all that's wrong at the football club, when he walked off the pitch at half-time against Newcastle, really kind of grinded my gears. And so, again, scrutinise the motivations of the person with the opinion, and we'll find out whether or not there's a motivation to distance themselves from accountability. Christian Romero, possibly another example of that. But if Ange Postecoglou is going to say essentially that what I'm saying now about Christian Romero, then surely he has to also hold the same candle when it comes to his own remarks regarding Timo Werner. As I say, if you're going to say it, then you've got to let other people say it, and you can't expect Romero to apologise to the board if you're not now going to apologise to Timo. Just because there's a relationship, a hierarchical difference in terms of the pecking order, it doesn't mean that one is okay and one's not. Especially 24 hours later, it looks like that is hypocrisy. And also, like I say, if you're going to do it, even if you are going to do it, then you shouldn't just hold one person's feet to the fire, because ultimately that entire front four yesterday didn't do what I've said enough times they will never do, which is press effectively and work hard, which is the A, B's and C's of this system. If you are into Angeball and you want Angeball to work, much like any press system, you need everybody to press as a team, as a unit, and you need the front to hunt in packs and work hard for each other off the ball as much as they work for themselves on it. And James Maddison has only demonstrated once in his time in a Tottenham shirt that he is willing to do that, and that was against Manchester City. And I rightly applauded him for it and said, more of the same, please, and we haven't seen it. Brennan Johnson has managed to pull the wool over some people's eyes by putting up the numbers that he has with scoring, and it's not something you can dismiss. You have to acknowledge it. Congratulations, you are a beneficiary of a system that does suit that sort of result. But ultimately, there is also that system's only going to be beneficial to you, Brennan, and to the team if you pull your weight in the other areas. And he really doesn't. He never has, and it's a really annoying characteristic that his stamina isn't there and his work rate isn't there. He doesn't get back to help out Pedro Porro. We'll talk about him in a second. And he doesn't get forward enough and do anything on the ball, nor does he press off the ball. Same with Timo. He's right to criticise Timo. Behind closed doors, Timo should get a dressing down, but then so should everybody else. Sonny, what's happened to that guy? 3 goals, I think, all season in all competitions. I think it is. It's not him. That's not the Sonny that we know, right? But he shouldn't be playing in the 9 in this system. I said this week that this game was our biggest game of the season, probably Ange's biggest game of his time at Tottenham, because absent, if we go out of the European Cup, and if we go out of the Carabao Cup, then I don't really see where there is any justification in letting this continue. I said that you have to give him enough rope. You can't sack him yet, because ultimately we weren't going to win the league. The Champions League is gone now, and so we might as well put all of our eggs into the easiest path forward towards European qualification, and that requires obviously cup success. And if he does win a cup, he will be our most successful manager essentially since Daniel Levy's been here, which in a lot of your lifetimes, but certainly this generation. And so while he's still in all 3 of them, then you have to kind of be patient and let this play out. I think otherwise it would be entirely unreasonable when you're sacking a guy for like a process that hasn't finished, a project that has problems and we all have reservations and concerns about, for sure, but the one that ultimately hasn't resulted in any failure yet, because we're still in all the competitions. And for me, you have to let that play out. However, if it didn't work out, if we lost last night and then on Thursday next week we get beaten by Manchester United, which is entirely plausible, then at that point you kind of run out of reasons really to see anything changing. Even when the players come back, he's not going to adapt the plan B. He's made that clear. He's obviously likes to now. He's feeling the brunt of responsibility being pushed in his direction. And whilst he might be calling for support from the big guys in the team, the senior players in the dressing room at Tottenham, obviously in reality he's not seeing it. He's not feeling that he's getting anything out of it. And I'm guessing that he feels a little bit sorry for himself. As I said at the start, the only person that's probably feeling more sorry for themselves than I am this morning is probably him, because he sits there and feels like he's under attack from the fans. He's under attack from the media, and the guys aren't pulling their weight. And so if their message isn't getting across in the dressing room, he's asking them in the dressing room, come on, I'm not asking that much of you other than to put in the bloody effort, and you're not doing it. And the media aren't calling you out. then I'm going to have to sort of defend myself a little bit here. And under the scrutiny and the pressure of the moment, he said something which obviously for the rest of us can only look like and scream hypocrisy and double standards in the cold light of day. And as I say, if he expects Romero to apologise, then I think that he should do the same, but he won't. And I think that that is another demonstration of sort of the pig-headedness that I worry is going to cloud his judgment in the pursuit of being right rather than doing what's right. There's so many parts about Ange that don't have to be the way they are, and he could win so many hearts and minds so easily if he was to embrace some more humility. But there is a stubbornness about him, and it's kind of expressing itself now in some weird ways that don't really fill me with any confidence. And in an attempt to try to be balanced, I'd try my best to find to offer you both sides of the argument as I see it, and then tell you where I land and then ask you where you land. At the moment, I don't really have too many excuses other than the elephant in the room, which is injuries, which it is a relevant factor. It is, of course it is. And the effort on the players' part is obviously also absent at times. And the fact that they have done it shows you they are capable of it. But in all too many times at the moment, the frequency of the demonstrations of showing it versus not showing it in terms of effort is leaning us in one direction. And then you have to scrutinise, well, what's going on there? Do the players really buy into the message? Are they really working for him? And if not, then what was all of this week's PR stunt, the kind of we're all behind Ange from Romero, from Dragossin, etc., and from the club, the intimations that we're fully behind him. If all of that stuff is legitimate and sincere, then the proof is in the pudding and talk is cheap, and we haven't really seen it from anybody of late. I'm not going to throw Pedro Porro under the bus. He's one of the guys that's performing badly, but I will forgive him because he doesn't get any support from the guy in front. And he's asked to run the most because of a system in a team that runs the most, in order to, when successful, of any team in the Premier League, and he is playing every minute. So he's at the kind of 99 percentile on all of the metrics in terms of he himself within the team itself within the other teams, and the minutes that are on offer to play. He's asked to play too much, and it doesn't need to be that way. We did have options. Obviously, we couldn't play Jed Spence last night because of the European squad selection, which you can scrutinise and come to your own determination whether that was a good idea or not without playing Monday morning quarterback. How did you feel at the time? Did you, when the choice had to be made, were you on board with Jed Spence and Serge Reguilon not being a part of it before the obvious fallout from injuries means that now you know with the hindsight that you probably should have done? I'm not sure. But with regards to the Premier League, there's been opportunities to play others in that position, and Jed Spence isn't getting any minutes and Serge Reguilon isn't either, and you have to ask why, what's going on there. Are they demonstrations of personal issues within the players? Are they problems that Ange has personally with the players' effort, with the relationships that they forged, or is it literally just a lack of belief in their ability at this system? I'm not sure, but in any event, it is questionable, and unfortunately, Pedro Porro is a car crash waiting to happen. That is going to burn out, and it's going to result in an injury or something meaningfully negative happening because he is being asked to burn the candle at both ends far too much. And it's, like I say, I don't think that's going to end well. Destiny Udogie, again, he's also asked to do a lot of work, but his form is really off at the moment. And I think there's more to it than just tiredness because he hasn't played as many minutes, I don't think, as Pedro has, and he's not the same player as he was last year, and it's crying out for some competition, which is why obviously yesterday there was some links to some left-sided centre-backs that could also double up as some left-backs as well, and I think that Tottenham do need to figure that out in the transfer window somehow to give some competition, or just use Serge Reguilon. He went to United and did a great shift. He was good at Brentford. There's no reason to think that he can't adapt. I always liked Serge Reguilon as a Tottenham player. I know that he might have had a tendency to kind of want to go out and party with the Lo Celso crew and that, but I don't think that click has gone. So I don't know. Is there what are we what's the problem here? It's a really strange one that doesn't really make any sense because he is a good player and he's just wasted away, and it's such an opportunity cost that it doesn't make sense to me. So figure that one out, please. Square that circle. Explain to me what's going on there, guys. In terms of the rest, as I say, Bissouma, get that guy out of the club. I can't stand him. He's such a letdown for me. A great player back in his day for Brighton, but he has... It's just been such a... From the expectations to reality, that guy just doesn't do it enough, doesn't work hard enough. He's capable, but he's not the right guy for the job. And listen, if we don't get a bloody 6 in January, then... the season, I don't think it doesn't matter if we're still in the cups. We won't be. At some point, that is going to hurt us in a knockout situation because the absence of logic not being employed here is it's temporary at best. You can get away with it for a period, but you won't get away with it in the long run. So yeah, issues in the midfield, guys. Midfield's a disaster. Why was Bentancur taken off when he wasn't playing anywhere near as bad as others, and he hasn't got anything to worry about for Sunday? He's not playing on Sunday. Again, scratch your head time. Why didn't Ange realise how important that game was and start with the players that were the most likely to help with the press, to help with the off the ball work, to help with all of those things? When you play that front four, you're asking for trouble and no good thing will come from it. I've said it before, I will say it again. That front four should not be seen in an Ange ball system if you expect anything other than frustrations and poor outcomes. You bring on Decky, and you bring on Solanke, there's more balance, there's more press, there's more ability to work hard off the ball, and good things come. Decky, yes, sublime finish, a great team goal, and a fairly strong end to the game, or for 25 minutes, where you'd say that Tottenham had the edge. But for the rest of the game, it was fairly even, if anything, leaning towards Rangers. And by the way, I know I'm 21 minutes in, and I haven't said this already, but the crowd were fantastic. Both the Rangers end and the Tottenham end. Congratulations to all of you. Well done. Amazing effort. It was brilliant to hear the... atmosphere on the TV. Rangers fans, did yourselves proud, and Tottenham fans, you guys, on a cold night, went far and tolerated what was obviously a shoddy game, but you were vocal the whole way through, and it didn't go unnoticed. So well done. We appreciate you. The last positive I'm going to say before I move on is Lucas Bergwijn. Coming of age performance. I know it was a cameo, but I'm starting to see what it is that we had glimpses of in the highlight reel from Sweden. We didn't know whether or not he had it at this level. I'm starting to see his confidence, and in that shift last night, and it's not the first time. And recently, he also did some pings, some long balls over the top that just were perfectly weighted, and he has this ability to kind of see the peripheral and the vision in the deep. I don't know really where he fits in, where his style of football, it hasn't really kind of made sense to me yet what sort of midfielder he is. Is he more of a 10? I don't know, because as a 10, unless you're going to come deep and do what James Maddison has been known to do, which I don't think suits him either, I'm not sure really what role Bergwijn fills, because he's certainly not a 6, but he does have zest and feistiness that he's not afraid to get stuck in. I think he's a future fact here. You'll see him in the future being thought of very highly for his ability to read the aerial trajectory and do some defensive work and hopefully some offensive work as well, because for a slight framed guy who's not going to be thought of as an aerial threat, he actually does have a very good ability to read and do that clearance stuff. So there's a lot of positives from Lucas, and I want to see more. I think he did enough to keep his position, but where he fits in, I'm not entirely sure what position he should naturally be kind of looking towards in the future. Let me know your thoughts on that one, guys. Let's finish this off. 23 minutes. A disappointing night in terms of result, or in terms of performance rather. The result, I think, if anything, we're lucky Fraser Forster sort of saved the point for us towards the end. More questions than answers, though, for Ange. Why is it these players, the senior players, won't fight for him? Why is it? Is it the tactics? Is it just the fact that you're picking an 11 that doesn't fit the system because you can't see it, what everyone else should be able to see, which is you need a profile of player to work off the ball at the front for this system. And when you pick those 4, it doesn't work. And if those 4 don't work, then it puts too much pressure on the midfield and they can't handle it. And then consequently, you get too much of the wave of energy coming towards the back line. Tough night for Archie Gray. Radu Dragusin did better. Tough night all round, really. But for me, the question marks have to be around Ange, his decision making and his reaction with regards consistency in the message. Where is the continuity around if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander? You can't set one rule for Romero and then break that own rule yourself 24 hours later and dress it up when accused of public criticism. He said it's not criticism, it's analysis. Well, if that was analysis, then isn't Romero's analysis also the same? I don't know. Either way, you have to think about and scrutinise what is the narrative and what are the motivations for people that are saying what they're saying. And in the case of Ange, I think it is a reaction to something that he hasn't been familiar with for a while, which is a problematic set of performances, a set of results that aren't going his way. Following the Australia thing, he had nothing but success all the way up until now, and he's struggling for the first time. And if his relationship, the proximity to previous struggles has been as big as it has, then he's not going to have learnt how to embrace a different way of dealing with it. And so he's reacting in a similar way to how he reacted to press stresses back in Australia when he was the youth team coach, which wasn't good. It didn't go down well. And I guess we're seeing some of the same kind of reactions. He wants the world to realise that it's not just his fault. And he's saying that stuff behind the scenes, and the players aren't playing for him. And he's rightly pissed off with that. I am too, and you should be as well. But his reaction to it is manifesting problems that will not go unscrutinised or unanalysed by the media, of which he is hoping for an easier time from, and is pissed off that he is getting all of the fingers pointing towards him when they could be pointing towards other people within the pitch. It's difficult. It's a difficult square to circle, guys, with regards Ange, because I think that right now I'm not seeing anything but a regression in my confidence in him. Game after game, I'm seeing a struggle with his ability to react, and the only thing that I've got really hanging on, that I can hang my hat on, is that I think it's unreasonable to sack a guy who is still in all of the competitions that we as a fan base are desperate to see us have some success in, and sacking him now, it might end up being for the better. It might end up giving us a better chance of winning some of them, but in terms of how will it look, how does it look as a concept to sack a guy 18 months into a project that has been riddled by injuries 2 years running, that has had to endure a transfer policy of which he is getting the grass shoots, the green shoots, the grass roots of, but the next guy will inherit the harvest from, and also a profile in the system of a season that hasn't yet resulted in any failure in any of the competitions. Maybe apart from the Champions League pursuit, which I think you could probably write off. Let me know your thoughts, guys. How do you feel about Ange? Is it right to stay aboard the Ange train and let him figure it out, or at least give him the opportunity to against United? How many more games will you give him? How many more performances like this will you tolerate? And what do you think about his press reaction, his consistency, his hypocrisy? What's it down to? I'm putting it down to a sook vibe, but I'm open-minded to hear your takes. Let me know. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, bye-bye.